Welcome everybody. We're going to be doing some watercolor today. You may have noticed in your box you got multiple designs to work with, and a lot of them are going to be designs that you get to create your own. This video is just to give you some tutorials and some watercolor tips. So these are the colors that we did place in the box. Our VIP's got full size, and you also got a couple of these test strips. So when you want to use these watercolors, you're going to put a small amount onto your palette, and when I say small, I mean very small. You don't need a whole lot of paint when you do watercolor, and I don't want you to waste the paints. For those of you that are regular members, you got them in little paint pots. Makes it very easy to pop it open, use the colors as you need, and go. I would still recommend using a palette or paper plate because you will want to mix some colors like purple but with blue and red. But to start, I'm going to do my test strip and do a little bit of the colors. And so I'm just going to get my brush wet, get off of it. I'm going to take a little bit of a color. Just going to apply a little bit of that paint. I'm going to rinse my brush a little bit. And then I'm just going to use that damp brush and just drag a little bit of that color out. And the reason we are going to do that is so that way you can see when it's super vibrant with more paint, and then when it's a little bit more diluted with water. So good tip is to just kind of pause, do a little test strip with all of your colors. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm pretty familiar with these ones, and I don't want the video to get too long. So if you have not done that yet, I would highly recommend using these little test papers to kind of get to know your colors, your paints, so that way when you are ready to design, by design I mean paint in your colors and choose what you want, you'll know what they look like. If you want to make a purple, you're also just going to take a little bit of red paint, scoop a little bit in the middle, rinse your brush off, scoop a little bit of blue, and you can mix watercolor paints just like any other paint. There you go. So I got a nice little purple color in there. And then you can take your test strip again and see how you got that purple color. So I'm going to show you two techniques today with watercolor, one of which is called wet on wet, another is called dry on wet. I'm going to give you a couple of different styles. So when we start a wet on wet, you take a clean brush, and I'm going to start with this paint pot right here. You're going to take a clean brush, you're going to get the area wet that you want. So like I want this pot to be kind of marbled color. So I'm going around the polka dots, and if you have masking tape at home, I would also recommend taping down your piece that you're working on. That's just going to help keep your paper flat as you work, and then let it dry, and then just slowly peel back your masking tape. So I'm just applying a little bit of water. As you see, I'm not drying my brush off. When I dip into water, just dip into a little bit of water, and it's going to fill in that area. Now I know you guys can't see, but I got pretty wet with water all around, not to where there's a big puddle on there, but where the paper is visibly damp. You can see it's raising the surface a little bit. And then you're going to pick a color you want to paint. Since I mixed that purple color, I'm just going to take a little bit of this purple, and I'm just going to apply. And the wet on wet, as you can see, is just going to want to kind of spiral out, and it's going to move. And like I said, I want to do a little bit of purple spots, but I also want some blues. So then I wash my brush, and I can take and add a little bit of blue next to it. This wet on wet technique is super fun. It's gonna kind of, and as you can see, I'm lightly just pressing and moving my brush around. You never have to be aggressive with your paints. Watercolor or the brushes, you're slowly moving that water and that paint around. So then I can wash my brush. Maybe I want a little bit more blue. Just going to dab a little blue. The darker the color, the less water. you have more paint pigment. If you want it to get a lighter color, then you're going to just add a little bit more water and it's going to be lighter. So I want it to be a little bit darker. Like I said, I want it to look like a pottery glaze on this cool pot. So I'm just taking a little bit of blue, purple, and as I said in the beginning, these videos are for you to watch, and then this box is really about you creating your own designs. And so I can just dab if I want it to look a little speckled, and just go in on there. So we're going to zoom in a little bit so that way you can see a little bit closer. When I do watercolor, I also like to do a couple at once. That way when this one's drying, I can kind of pop over to the next one. So while that pot's drying, I'm going to work a little bit on this other succulent pot. I'm going to show you another technique. So what on this pot we're going to do is called wet on dry. So you're going to get your brush wet, get it clean. I'm going to take a little bit of whatever color I want. Say I'm going to do a red pot on this one. So I'm going to take a little bit of that red paint on there. And I'm just going to dry, I'm not pre-moistening the paper. I'm just going to draw a little bit of paint out where I want it to be a little bit darker. So I just placed a little bit of that paint lightly where I want it to be darker. I'm getting my brush wet, not gonna dry it. And I'm just gonna take this damp brush and slowly start working that paint in. And the reason I'm doing this technique on this pot is I want it to be a little bit darker around the edges, and then I kind of wanted it a light pink color. And then if you need to add a little bit more paint, you could always just grab a little more paint on here. A little more water, and I just lightly, and I like to do circular motions a lot of the time when I'm working in watercolor. Lightly just working through, kind of getting that paste to blend into that water, and you can lightly just dab too. If you want more color in a spot, once it's wet, then you can just dab a little more color. And going back, and getting that paint I first placed, put on here. As you dabble in watercolor, you will find out if you're more of a wet on wet person or if you like the control of dry on wet. So anywhere that you really want to control the color, I'd recommend doing dry on wet, wet on wet for when you want colors to kind of just blend together. The wet on wet technique works well when you have multiple colors that blend nicely into each other. So yellow, blue, green, red, orange, yellow. That's pretty good. So now that that one's dry, I'm gonna go back and add some cactus coloring onto this nice little cactus. And I'm going to want to mix, I'm gonna mix 3 greens. So I'm going to use a regular green that's here. I'm going to set aside on this side, I'm going to mix a lighter green, and to do that, I'm going to scoop a little bit of yellow, and I'm going to mix a little yellow and green. Maybe even a little bit more yellow. There we go. So I got a lighter green, wash and brush. And to make a darker, I'm going to scoop just a little bit of that and some blue. And that's going to make a darker green. So we have 3 different shades to pull from. So I mix a little bit of a lighter green, the regular, and then a little bit of the darker green. Because especially on these ones, I want to have one light, one dark, one light, one dark, and it's going to give us a really cool 3-dimensional effect. So I'm going to start first on this side one, and I want it to be darker in color. So I'm going to take a little bit of that darker green mixed, and I'm going to just apply a little bit of color on here. So just kind of dab and streak it right on out. Then I'm going to take my brush, give it a little tap. Make sure I don't got too much on there. And I'm just going to add a little bit of water here. Like I said, I want that one to be nice and very vibrant green, so it has a lot more paint on there. I did that dry on, wet on dry. Wash my brush, and then I'm going to take my lighter one. I'm going to kind of space in between, let that one dry a little bit. Then I'm going to go dark, medium, light. So I'm going to take the lightest green and go all the way over. Wash my brush. And then for these other 2 that I'm going to do just the regular green, I'm going to place a little bit of water right on it because I want it to have that cool marbled effect. So I just place a little bit of water, and then I can take a little bit of the regular green and put it on there. You could always steal from another space too if you want to add a little bit more. Remember, you get to be the designer on these. You can take and streak a little bit of yellow on there as well. It's really gonna just make it pop. And if you get too much paint, like this one side has quite a bit of paint, you could steal a little bit of that paint and start another one. So I can just grab a little bit from that paint pool over there and just work my way right on in. Just taking my time. just going to paint along just a little bit more to give you guys an idea. But like I said, try this out. You have a couple pieces of paper that are blank, like and as well as your scraps. We also threw in a cool little bookmark, and I threw in an extra little llama in this box. So I want you to get very creative. We're excited to see all of your beautiful paintings. So I'm going to use just a little bit, watering down some paint on my palette. So that way when I apply the color, it's going to be a little bit more light and transparent. These cool two-tone leaves. And the key to getting these different colors really is watering or mixing some of your paint. So behind any ones that are kind of folded over, I'm doing with a nice thick coat of paint. Then you add some water to your palette. Wash your brush off, grab just a little bit of that water down. You don't always have to, if you want it even lighter, just don't dip your brush again. Just use that less paint that's on your brush. You get a little bit lighter as you go in, and then if you're like, oh, that's too light, then grab a little bit more of your paint. Easier said than done, huh? I love plants and succulents. I was very excited to do this box. I want this part to be darker. That's going to be way in there. So the key with the succulent and like the flowers and the llama are doing the parts that are folded over darker, and then lighter, meaning use a little bit more water for the other petals. So even if I want that's too dark, then I wash off my brush, take that clean brush, and then lay down a little water, and then just pull some of this paint up in there. And again, see how you can move and control where you want it to be dark? I'm gonna leave more paint down here. It's a little bit darker. I can grab a little more green. So at the top. And work your way through. Got so many pages to paint and play with in this box. So maybe start with one plant, or maybe the one that's in the pot. Where you're like, okay, I'm gonna start with one a little more simple, or the one that you like the least, and then kind of work your way up. But with these designs printed right onto your paper, you really can't make a mistake, guys. So I'm taking that blue and that green, put down those areas I want a little bit darker, and just pulling them right up there, just moving that around. And as stuff dries, you can see where you got some little holidays. And I'm actually gonna leave, I like that white and black polka dot. It's super cute. So cute. You want a brighter green, mix a little bit yellow. a little more turquoise green, mix a little more blue. Just takes a little playing around for. And again, use those test strips to kind of play and mix some colors. And then you can kind of figure out what colors you like. I'm just kind of choosing which ones I want a little bit more dark. Place a little bit of that darker paint on now. So when I kind of take some of this green, you want it to look like it's one plant, but you also want to have just variations of shades to make it look a little more realistic. And it just draws your eye in a little bit more. You kind of more attractive to look at. Add more green on those guys. I just absolutely love this succulent one. It's so cute. Watercolor looks great too. You go grab a frame. And that's it, guys. I hope you guys have fun painting in all these watercolors again. Play around with some of the colors, mix them together. You got a cool orange, like terracotta, whoops, color, that yellow ochre, which is a like a golden color. That's what I used down here in yellow. So if you want to do like one of your plants, let me adjust the camera. Oops. So just to give you an idea of that orangey color, I'm going to paint on this pot. You can add a little bit of water, and it looks like a cool terracotta color. You can also add a little bit of that yellow and blend in. So lots of fun stuff to play with. Alright, so happy painting, and we will see you guys next one.